Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to BiblioTech On Air. I'm Rosanna, and today we have a very special guest with us, the creator of Comic Arts of San Antonio, which if you don't already follow on Instagram, make sure you do that. We have Nasser Rodriguez with us today. Thank you for joining us today, Nasser.
Thank you for having me, Rosanna. Can't wait.
Alrighty, so can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Your career, where you grew up, your interests, just a little bit so we can get to know you.
Yeah, definitely. I am born and raised here in San Antonio, Texas. Um, I moved around a bit and lived a few other places and visited other places, but most of my life has been here, right here in San Antonio. Um, as far as interest, I guess my biggest one, of course, is comic books. I'm also a big wrestling fan and NBA basketball, so I'm a Spurs fan. And so, yeah, if anyone wants to talk to me about wrestling, basketball, or comics, those are my areas of expertise, I would say.
That sounds perfect for San Antonio. I mean, San Antonio is known for loving wrestling. Obviously, we love the Spurs. And then with like the influx that we've been seeing of different events coming up, like Big Texas Comic Con, San Japan, and of course, the Big Casa event coming up. It just seems like
Yeah,
it's
and
perfect.
we'll be involved with Big Texas as well. So that's the weekend after Casa, and they asked us to help them bring in a comic book guest. So we will also be there with Marvel artist Chris Campagna.
Dang, that's exciting. And I mean, you have quite the schedule ahead of you then, just weekend after weekend and all that prep that goes into both events.
Yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned you're in contact with different comic artists, which I'm sure you've built relationships with throughout, your years of hosting these events or like participating in other events. Like when did you get first into comics and like comic culture? Like what helped you develop that interest?
So I've had like different periods, I guess. So I asked my mom this because I have vague memories of it. And she guesses I was probably around 3 or 4 years old. And that was, she would take me to work with her. And there was a place a few doors down from where she worked that sold like old beat up comic books for like 5 or 10 cents. And she would buy me a bunch there and take me to work with her, put me under the desk, and I would just like spend the time flipping through these comics. And she says this is how I began learning how to read at an early age. So yeah, it was a lot of that started early on. Um, for any of our older listeners out there, I'm of the age where Toys R Us was still around,
R.I.P. Toys
and
R Us.
yeah, so they used to sell these like 3 pack of like mystery comics there, where you could see what you were getting on the front and on the back, but you never knew what the middle comic was. So then that was the next thing that I remember as I got a little older. My mom would buy me those packs, and then I kind of just got out of comics as I got a little bit older.
Mhm.
But then once we get to like the mid '90s and like Death of Superman happens and Batman's back being broken, that's like really brought me back into it. I was trying to get every issue. My mom had my wish list of what issue I needed next and that kind of stuff. So she was looking for me when she was out and about. And then again, once that passed, I'm getting probably around like 17, 18 years old.
Mhm.
And once again, like I kind of just drop out of comics. I'm starting college. I'm probably more concerned about my car and girlfriends and stuff like that. So I really just wasn't paying attention to what was going on in comics for a long while. And then there was a comic shop years later. There was a comic shop here in San Antonio called Bob's Comics near West Avenue in Blanco.
Mhm.
I would pick up my brother from school there. He went to Churchill High School. And just one day while I was waiting to pick him up, I decided to pop in there. And that was right before Marvel's Civil War event.
Ooh, that's a
So
good one to walk into.
yeah, so that's what brought me back in, and so that was like early 2000s from what I can remember. And yeah, since then, like I haven't had a period where I'm out of it again. That hooked me in, and I've been in pretty much ever since.
Dang, that's really cool. Especially like you started so young, and the fact that that was what your mom said helped get you into reading. Like that's kind of underrated that you know, cuz sometimes people see comic as like, oh, it's just this nerd thing or like, you know, it's just a bunch of drawings. There's legit storylines and people seem to forget that. So I think that's really neat that, you know, that helped you learn how to read as a kid.
Yeah, and I think especially at that age, like I said, I probably didn't really know how to read at that time. This is helping me, and you've got the pictures to go with the words, so
Mhm.
it's giving you a lot of context to figure out what those words on the page are.
Yeah, it develops that comprehension too. Like you said, maybe at that time you didn't know exactly what was going on, but I'm sure, you know, you were picking stuff up from it.
Yeah, and then so that was kind of my history on how I've been reading and collecting comics. But also around that time, once I started going to that Bob's Comics shop regularly, shopping there as a customer. And eventually I end up helping them out there, working there. I had just graduated college. They offered if I wanted to manage the store. So I become like a comic retail manager. And then that's where it really first started making some connections with local artists and local uh, comic book community here in San Antonio. And then I got involved with a convention here in San Antonio called Texas Comic Con. They've been gone for many years now, but at that time they were just starting up. They needed help with their comic book guests and booking, so they brought me on. And yeah, it was 3 years of me just bringing in guests for them, handling the hotel booking and the airfares, and reaching out to comic book guests and that kind of stuff. And so I left that job. Um, well, actually, it was more of a volunteer position at that time. But since I wasn't that far out of college, I was still always looking for like a full time job. I ended up finding one. So I left Texas Comic Con, but in the back of my mind, the convention, working with conventions was always there. And then if San Antonio listeners remember Alamo City Comic Con,
Mhm.
uh, they brought me on for 1 year. Same thing, helping comic guests. And then I left that organization. And then, just like in the back of my mind, I was always thinking about conventions, and I loved working with those shows. But they were really more pop culture shows. They were more concerned about the celebrities and the actors and stuff. And the back of my mind, I always just wanted something that was focused on comic books and comic creators. And yeah, I always had this idea, and it wasn't until 2022 that I decided to act on that idea, and that's when we got the first house.
So that's just kind of like been marinating in the background for you in a way because all the experience that you built up, you know, being part of these other big comic expos or you know, conventions and stuff. And then from there you're like, no, I want this to be focused just, you know, on comics, like kind of pop culture in a way is kind of built around comic culture, but it's still a little underrated. Like you said, you wanted to put the big focus on those artists and like those storylines and all of that.
Yeah. And like I said, definitely marinating because that last year that I worked at Alamo City Comic Con, I believe that was like 2013, 2014. So yeah, almost a decade of me sitting on this idea and just kind of figuring out like how to do it and how I wanted to do it and that kind of stuff. Until finally, it was just like, okay, let's do this.
And by let's, you mean yourself, because it's something that you've been doing like yourself, right? Do you have a team yet? Or is it something that you're still like, no, I got this. I know exactly how I want it.
Yeah, it's still pretty small. So 2000 this year, 2024 will be our third year, and it's me mostly doing everything. But of course, I do get help from my wife. I've got a couple of friends that'll help me out on the day of the event as like volunteers to make sure everything's running smoothly. But for the most part, it's me doing everything. I'm the guest booker. I'm the marketing person. I'm the the website developer. I'm pretty much everything.
Everything, yeah. We see the promo that you just put out on Instagram, like everything else that you just mentioned. Again, the marketing, the you know, the booking. That's
Yeah.
insane that you're able to handle all that. And when we attended that year, you know, I mean, it was just a massive event and it was so successful from what we saw. So you obviously like have such a good handle on it.
The feedback I get from other exhibitors that like y'all were, everyone seems to have a good time there. And most importantly, it seems like the attendees that came were interested in picking up people's original artwork and stories and that kind of stuff. Because that's like really one of the main reasons I do this. Like, I want to put the focus on not only the guests that we're bringing in, the well-known names, but I want people while they're there to get an autograph from the well-known guest that they check out the indie comic creator who's making his or her own comic at home, and now
Hmm.
they're putting this story out into the world and hoping people find it and like it.
Yeah, and from the looks of it, I mean, you have quite a few. Like, if you again, for those of y'all wanting to check more about this, make sure you go to the Casa website. They have just a list of like, all the artists and just, groups that are going to be there. And it's insane because, that kind of is a lot of work in itself too, because it has all the links to their work and you get to see, like a little preview of, oh, okay, so this is what I'm going to get to see over at Casa.
Yeah, definitely. If anyone wants to go to comicarts-sa.com, like you said, I'll have a list there of all of our exhibitors. And that's one thing I'm really proud of this year's. Nearly every exhibitor that we have is a comic creator. So it could be a comic book, it can be a web comic, a comic strip, like a newspaper strip. It could be any type of sequential art. If you're telling the story in the comic book form, we've got those are the exhibitors that.
In the future, is there like a dream guest or a certain team that you would like to have at, Casa one day? Just like whether it's someone that you've admired over the years or even just someone that you've kind of heard in passing, you're like, oh man, I would love to invite them and see if they could make it out.
Oh, definitely. There's so many from like legends that I grew up reading and I love their stuff, like a Mark Bagley, who's really well known for his work on Spider-Man, or to even like current superstars like Daniel Warren Johnson, who's doing fabulous work on Transformers. Like I have this huge list in my head, and a lot of them I've reached out to, and it's either just at this time they're not able to make it because of schedule, or we do find it difficult sometimes to get guests to come to the show because we're only a 1 day show, which is totally understandable because it's a lot of commitment to fly to San Antonio and stay in here and away from their stuff that they're working on for
Right.
just 1 day. Definitely, I have lots of names that as we continue to grow and hopefully expand to maybe a 2 day show, like we'll be bringing in.
That would be amazing if it became a 2 day show. Like, how big do you see it becoming? Because it seems like it's growing every year. Like, how do you handle that?
So I've thought about this, and I don't want to become a huge uh, downtown like at the Henry B convention, but I would like to get a bit bigger than what we are right now. So kind of medium size show, I
Mhm.
guess.
That's fair. And I mean, it when you keep it medium like that, it remains accessible to the public because unfortunately with like a lot of these bigger events that happen, people get priced out or, just to meet someone, there's already a ginormous fee. So I think that's pretty reasonable and like a really good thing.
Yeah, that's definitely what I want to avoid. Like, our ticket prices are going to be only $8 at the door. So we want to make it affordable for people to be able to come in and you still have money to spend on the exhibitors that are going to be there. So yeah, that's one thing I'm definitely keeping an eye on. Like we keep growing. Like I don't want to go to the point where tickets are too expensive for people to come in and still spend money on the people there that are selling their comics.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's about making those connections, whether it's people here in the community or out of state, out of the city. It's
Mhm.
not something you can really put a price on. Which I mean, $8 that's definitely beyond reasonable when you look at some of these other you know charges like $200 weekend pass. Oh my god.
I know. And I mean, we've got some great pop culture shows here in San Antonio, and they bring in like a lot of the really big name celebrities,
Mm-hmm.
and that's awesome. That's great for what they're doing. That's definitely not the what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to still keep the focus. It's a comic convention, and they're called Comic Cons. I'm trying to keep the focus on. Yeah.
But another thing, so speaking of like the event getting bigger like we mentioned earlier, it's going to be held at the Hyatt by the airport this year, which is going to be a different venue from because it was at the Wonderland of the Americas last time. So how has that transition been? Has it been like just a huge adjustment, or were you able to just like get right into it?
So, real quick, it's the Marriott San Antonio Airport.
Marriott, my mistake,
Yeah, yeah,
everyone. It
no
is
problem.
the
So it's the
Marriott.
Marriott. It's right off of 410, in between, for any of the San Antonio listeners, right between like Airport and McCullough, right off of 410 there. But yeah, there has been some adjustment because the Wonderland of the Americas, they were always very kind to let us do our first two events there. Um, but I wasn't always happy with the layout because it was so spread out. And I always felt kind of bad putting people in certain areas because I felt that they might not get foot traffic. So when we went around looking for other venues or possible venues, I knew I wanted like an enclosed space, more like an event center or something like that, that we could kind of control where the foot traffic went and hopefully get everybody to walk by the tables of every exhibitor and maybe pick up something that they like. Um, so it has been a little different. One of the difficulties that I ran into that I wasn't prepared for is just finding a mid-sized event. Like if you're a big event and you want to go downtown, we've got the Henry B,
Hmm.
or if you want to go to the Freeman or something like that, right? And if you're a small event, we've got the Wonderland, and like I know some of the other malls and shopping centers are doing events now, and I found a lot of event centers around San Antonio that are smaller size for like maybe like a quinceanera or like a small wedding reception, something like that. But I had a really difficult time finding like a mid-sized venue for what we were looking for. But after reaching out to quite a few places, the Marriott was very nice to us, and um, looks like they're going to provide everything we need. And the good thing is too, they have an additional ballroom that if next year we continue to expand, we can always move into that one as well and take both ballrooms.
That's pretty good. So they're really working with you and then already looking to the future because, I mean, it's pretty much guaranteed. It's going to expand a little bit probably by next year. So that's good that they have that other option pretty much ready for you and you're building that relationship.
Yeah, definitely. Because, like I said, I've already been eyeing it, and I try not to get too far ahead of myself because I want to focus on making sure this one goes down without any problems.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I do want to think about like, okay, well, where do we go, or what do we do if next year we need more space?
Right. Totally understandable. So going back to comics and stuff, for anyone for anyone who's looking to get into comics or graphic novels, do you have like some that you recommend, whether it's, all ages or maybe targeted to adults or for kids? What are some that you would just recommend?
Well, first, whenever I worked in a comic shop, I always would ask people like, what are the things that you're already into? Like, are there authors or is there a genre of books that you normally read, or what TV shows do you watch and like? So, if somebody really enjoyed like the Walking Dead show, like
Mhm.
that's easy. Like, hey, check out the comics. The show and the comics are very similar, but there's going to be some changes that'll keep you like guessing. You know, if you're a sci-fi fan, maybe like I would steer them towards Saga from Image Comics. My wife is a huge fantasy and sci-fi fan, and she absolutely adores Saga. So that's something that I would steer a sci-fi fan towards. So really, it's going to be kind of trying to find out what that person's interest is already, and what media are they already partaking in, as far as books or TV shows or movies, and then seeing if we can find something that aligns close to that.
That's a fair assessment. And I mean, there's graphic novels and comics for pretty much every taste out there. So I mean, it makes sense to want to kind of narrow it down a little bit. But for you, what are some of like your favorite storylines or like comic artists? What's something that you're just like, oh man, this is top notch for me?
So I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. So like my collecting is everything like the Amazing Spider-Man series that's coming out right now. But then I'm also trying to collect all the old issues. So I'm trying to complete a full run of Amazing Spider-Man from 1963 to current.
Ooh.
So that's what and then not only am I trying to collect them, but I'm trying to read through the whole thing.
Mhm.
So I started at 1963, and I think I'm up to 1996 right now.
Holy
So I
crap,
still,
that is a
yeah,
collection.
yeah. So I still have quite a bit of reading to do. And as far as collecting, like I still need like most of the early stuff. that might be a little out of my price range right now.
Fair, yeah, because some of those issues can go for easily thousands. It's
Yeah.
insane. So I imagine you must have quite like not just Spider-Man alone, but you must have quite the comic collection going on.
Yeah, like that's mostly collected as far as like older issues.
Mhm.
But as far as like my current stuff that I have like at my comic shop that I go pick up every week, I'm a huge fan of Jeff Lemire. People might know his work from the Sweet Tooth Netflix show. That show was based on a story by Jeff Lemire. So like he just released a new series called Minor Arcana that I'm
Mhm.
really looking forward to. So that number one just came out a few days ago, and I'm really enjoying that. And then, like I said, there's also like some Spider-Man, I guess, like offshoots that I pick up. There's like a Spider Boy series right now, that kind of stuff. And I'm trying to remember what are the other ones I'm picking one of our guests, Chris Allen, who's an artist for Marvel, he's working on a Black Panther versus Predator miniseries.
Ooh.
Yeah, so issue one of that has been released. So I picked that up, and that was really good. So yeah, that's just some of the stuff that I wait for the new issue to come out.
I know you mentioned it earlier. So this is typically like how we like to end our episodes. What are you currently reading? Which I know you just mentioned a couple, but if you just want to reiterate or mention something that you might have forgotten earlier.
Oh yeah, definitely. So like I said, Jeff Lemire's Minor Arcana from Boom Studios. I'm a huge fan of that. um, the Marvel Black Panther versus Predator series right now. There's a relatively new publisher called Distillery, and
Hmm.
I'm liking their comics. They're releasing them in like bigger, like magazine size format, and I'm really liking a lot of their stuff right now. Sona and White Boat, those have been some really good ones. And then my wife does get some stuff that I'll take a peek at, and I'm like, ooh, this is pretty good. Let me start reading this too. So she is reading The Sacrificers from Rick Remender from Image Comics. And then she's also reading from IDW, Hunger and Dusk. Um, that's written by G. Willow Wilson, the co-creator of the Kamala Khan Miss Marvel. So that's
Ooh.
been something that I've really been enjoying. Actually, digitally on BiblioTech's Hoopla app,
Hey.
I've been keeping up with all the Energon universe stuff from Skybound. So Transformers, Void Rivals, Duke, Cobra Commander, all of those I read on Hoopla, the Volume One trades, and that stuff has been great. I can't.
And that's something we love to hear. I mean, that's great that you're using our resources too to catch up on, because we have a ton of comics. We have a ton of comics, ton of graphic novels on Hoopla. So it's great to hear that it's getting its use. But thank you very much. I know you're super busy, so thank you again for taking the time to join me here and record an episode.
Thank you for having me on. Now that we're getting like really close to the show, the it's all about trying to get the word out right now. So anything to help me get the word out, thank you all so much for having me on the show. Um, and if anybody wants to see our guest list or exhibitor list, as Rosanna mentioned earlier, please check out our website, comicarts-sa.com, or you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at comicarts.sa. And then to throw another shout out at Hoopla, Christopher Priest, one of our guests, all of his Black Panther collection and his latest work, Superman Lost, that got nominated for an Eisner Award this year, are on Hoopla. That's how I read Superman Lost recently. So you can find a lot of stuff from there, from some of our guests on Hoopla.
Y'all heard it here, folks. Make sure y'all check those out over on Hoopla. Again, thank you so much for joining us. And I guess we'll probably see you soon at the big Comic Arts event since we're going to be there.
Yeah, definitely. Can't wait.
All right. Thanks again, Nasser. Thank you again for the time.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon, okay?
All right. Have a good one.
All right, you as well. Thank you so much. All righty, everyone. So once again, thank you for tuning in to this episode of BiblioTech on Air with Nasser Rodriguez. Again, make sure you go check out the Comic Arts website he just mentioned, as well as his Instagram page to stay up to date with all the guests and exhibitors that will be at Comic Arts, which is going to be held at the Marriott by the airport. So again, thank you guys for listening, and we will catch y'all on the next episode. Bye.